April 23rd, 1985. Coca-Cola, the most recognized brand on planet Earth, stood in front of the world and announced they were killing their product. After 99 years, after building the most valuable beverage empire in history, after becoming synonymous with America itself, they declared that the secret formula was dead. What happened next was 79 days of corporate chaos that nearly destroyed a billion-dollar company. But here's the twist. Some people still believe today, what if it was all planned? What if this disaster was actually the most brilliant marketing move in history? This is a story of how Coca-Cola forgot the first rule of business. You're not just selling a product, you're selling a feeling. For most of the 20th century, Coca-Cola didn't just dominate the soft drink market. They were the soft drink market. But by 1975, something dangerous was happening. Something Coca-Cola executives had never experienced before. They were losing. The threat had a name, the Pepsi Challenge. Starting in 1975, Pepsi launched a brilliantly simple campaign. Put people in a mall, blindfold them, have them taste two colas, and watch them choose Pepsi. It was genius, it was humiliating, and worst of all for Coca-Cola, it was working. In grocery stores, Coke's market share crashed from 60% to 24%. Wall Street was watching, investors were nervous, and in the mahogany boardrooms of Coca-Cola's Atlanta headquarters, panic was setting in. Enter Roberto Goizueta, Cuban immigrant, chemical engineer, and in 1981, the newly appointed CEO of Coca-Cola. Goizueta looked at the Pepsi problem and came to a conclusion that would change everything. If people prefer Pepsi's taste in blind tests, then we need to beat them at taste. He greenlit Project Kansas, named after Pepsi executives' famous boast that they'd beat Coke even in Coca-Cola's backyard. The mission: create a new formula. $4 million, the most extensive taste testing project in the company's history. 30 cities, 200,000 people, and the data was crystal clear. People preferred the new, sweeter cola. It wasn't even close. 55% chose new Coke over old Coke. Even better, it beat Pepsi too. Goizueta and his team had the science. They had the data. They had 200,000 taste tests proving they were right. What they didn't have was wisdom, because buried in that research was a warning they chose to ignore. When people in focus groups learned that old Coke would be replaced, not added to, but replaced, something changed. They got angry. Some got emotional. One woman even cried. The researchers flagged this. They said, this might be a problem. And Coca-Cola's response, that's just resistance to change. They'll get over it. So they made the decision. This wouldn't be new Coke and classic Coke on shelves together. This would be new Coke instead of classic Coke. They were taking something away. They were erasing 99 years of history. They were changing America's favorite drink, and they had no idea what they'd just done. April 23rd, 1985, Lincoln Center, New York City. 150 reporters packed the room. National television coverage. This was the Super Bowl of corporate announcements. Roberto Goizueta stepped to the microphone with absolute confidence. The best taste ever in Coca-Cola's history. Bill Cosby, America's dad, was their spokesman. They'd placed the biggest product launch budget in company history. The new cans hit stores immediately. Initial reaction, actually positive. Some people tried it and liked it. In Atlanta, the executives celebrated. They thought they'd won. They hadn't even seen the battlefield yet. Within hours, something unexpected started happening. The phones at Coca-Cola headquarters started ringing. At first, 1,500 calls a day. By the end of the week, 8,000. And they weren't happy calls. How dare you? You've ruined it. Bring back our Coke. Within days, protesters appeared in Atlanta, Coca-Cola's own hometown. A man named Gay Mullins, a retiree from Seattle, formed a group called Old Coke Drinkers of America. He took out ads, appeared on talk shows. Within weeks, he had 100,000 members. People started hoarding old Coke like it was gold, driving hundreds of miles to find stores that still had it, paying $30 for a case that used to cost $6. Classified ads appeared. Old Coke for sale. Serious inquiries only. It got so intense that Coca-Cola hired a psychiatrist to listen to the calls and analyze what was happening. His conclusion? The American public was experiencing grief. One caller told an operator, "It's like changing the Pledge of Allegiance. It's like changing the flag." Another said, "There are only two things in my life, God and Coca-Cola. Now you've taken one of those away from me." You see, Coca-Cola had made a fatal miscalculation. They thought they were selling sugar water. They were wrong. They were selling America. The media frenzy went nuclear. Peter Jennings, one of the most respected news anchors in America, covered New Coke like it was a breaking geopolitical crisis. Saturday Night Live mocked them mercilessly. Pepsi couldn't believe their luck. They ran ads declaring victory. The other guy blinked. Even Fidel Castro weighed in, calling it proof of American capitalist decline. Inside Coca-Cola, morale collapsed. Bottlers, the independent distributors who made Coke millions, were in open revolt. The stock price wobbled. But what Coca-Cola executives couldn't understand was why? The answer was psychological. Loss aversion, one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Research shows that losing something feels about twice as bad as gaining something feels good. People weren't just evaluating New Coke on its taste, they were mourning the loss of old Coke. For millions of Americans, Coca-Cola wasn't a beverage. It was childhood, it was summer, it was tradition, it was identity. And when you change someone's identity without asking, they fight back. 79 days. That's how long Coca-Cola lasted. 79 days of angry calls, of protests, of plummeting goodwill, of watching their crown jewel, the most beloved brand in America, turn into a punchline. The internal meetings got desperate. We're losing them. The bottlers are threatening lawsuits. This isn't working. The data was undeniable. New Coke tasted better, but people didn't want it. And so, Roberto Goizueta made the call that almost no CEO in history has ever had the humility to make. They were bringing back the original. July 11th, 1985. Coca-Cola called another press conference. The press corps knew something big was coming. They could smell blood. Donald Keogh, Coca-Cola's president, stepped to the microphone. "We have heard you. The original formula is returning." The room exploded. The original formula would return as Coca-Cola Classic. New Coke would stay on shelves alongside it, but everyone knew the truth. This was surrender. And then something remarkable happened. The phone calls that had been filled with rage turned into gratitude. In some cities, people literally celebrated in the streets. Some called back crying, but this time, tears of joy. Senator David Pryor of Arkansas gave a speech calling it a meaningful moment in U.S. history. The headlines went from mocking to triumphant. The real thing is back. Coke blinks and America wins. And sales of Coca-Cola Classic? They skyrocketed. Not just back to where they were, higher than before New Coke even launched. Pepsi's momentum? Dead in the water. Within months, Coca-Cola Classic was dominating the market again. And that's when people started asking the question, was this all planned? Was New Coke actually the most brilliant marketing disaster of all time? Think about it. Coca-Cola accidentally creates the biggest news story of 1985, gets more free media coverage than a Super Bowl ad campaign could ever buy, reminds Americans why they love Coca-Cola, and comes out of it stronger than ever before, with Pepsi's taste test advantage completely neutralized. Convenient, isn't it? The conspiracy theorists point to evidence. Perfect timing, summer launch, maximum media attention. The emotional response was exactly what they needed to kill Pepsi's taste advantage. Coca-Cola's brand value increased because of the crisis. And psychologically, it's brilliant. People appreciate what they almost lost. But Goizueta and his team denied it, repeatedly, vehemently. We're not that dumb and we're not that smart. And there's counter evidence too. The company took real financial hits during those 79 days. No paper trail has ever emerged, no whistleblowers, no deathbed confessions. And frankly, the risk was too enormous. If they'd miscalculated, if people had just accepted New Coke, they would have killed their own golden goose. So, was it a conspiracy? Probably not. But the truth is almost more interesting. It was a genuine mistake that taught them something priceless. New Coke taught Coca-Cola 5 lessons they would never forget. 1. Brand loyalty isn't rational, it's emotional. You can't engineer love in a laboratory. 2. Taking something away triggers a deeper response than giving something new. 3. Sometimes your customers know better than your data. 4. When you have 99 years of history, that is your product. And 5. Admitting you're wrong quickly and genuinely can actually make you stronger. These lessons didn't just save Coca-Cola, they transformed them. But the real question isn't what they learned, it's what we can learn. First lesson, data isn't wisdom. Coca-Cola had 200,000 taste tests, the most comprehensive research project in their history. And every single data point told them, New Coke wins. But they were asking the wrong question. Taste tests measure one sip. They measure flavor preference in isolation. They don't measure what it's like to drink a full can. They don't measure habit. They don't measure memory. And they definitely don't measure attachment. There's an old saying, the map is not the territory. Data tells you what people do. It doesn't always tell you why. We see this mistake repeated constantly. In 2010, Gap redesigned their logo based on data about modernization. The backlash was instant. They reverted in 6 days. In 2009, Tropicana changed their iconic packaging to something cleaner and more modern. Sales dropped 20% in 1 month. They changed the back. When Netflix cracked down on password sharing, initial backlash was fierce, though the outcome was different because they stuck with it. The lesson: data scientists can tell you what's measurable, but wisdom requires understanding what can't be measured: memory, identity, love. Second lesson: loss aversion is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Research by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky proved it. Losing $100 feels about twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good. People weren't evaluating New Coke versus Old Coke. They were experiencing the loss of Old Coke, and that loss felt like betrayal. This is why app redesigns trigger such rage. Why did they change it? It was fine before. It's why companies grandfather loyal customers into old pricing. It's why smart companies add new products rather than replace old ones. Because you're not just managing products, you're managing memories. And people's memories of the past are worth more than promises about the future. Third lesson: owning your mistakes builds trust. Coca-Cola did something almost unheard of in corporate America. In just 79 days, they admitted they were wrong. Not with excuses, not with spin. They listened, they admitted failure, they reversed course. And you know what happened? America forgave them. More than forgave. They fell in love all over again. Brand loyalty didn't just recover, it increased. Now, contrast that with companies that doubled down on mistakes. Wells Fargo's fake account scandal. Initial denial made it so much worse. Boeing 737 MAX crisis. Delayed admission cost lives and billions. Theranos lying until the very end. Prison time. The difference between these companies and Coca-Cola? Pride versus humility. Pride says, we know better than you. Trust us. Humility says, we made a mistake. We're listening. We're fixing it. Pride protects the ego, but humility protects the empire. So what happened to New Coke? It was renamed Coke 2 in 1992, quietly discontinued in 2002. It briefly returned in 2019 for a Stranger Things promotion, a piece of 80s nostalgia. Now it lives in museums and business school case studies, a punchline, a cautionary tale, the symbol of corporate failure. But Coca-Cola? They emerged stronger than ever. Coca-Cola's Classic dominated the market for decades. The brand that almost died became more powerful than before. And every MBA student in the world learns about New Coke, not as a marketing strategy, but as a reminder. Here's the beautiful paradox. New Coke failed. spectacularly. But in failing, it did something no marketing campaign could ever do. It reminded people why they loved Coca-Cola in the first place. Sometimes, the best way to win isn't to change the game. It's to remember why people started playing with you. The next time you're in a meeting and someone says, "The data says we should change everything," remember New Coke. Remember that what you're building isn't just the product, it's a relationship. And relationships aren't built on data, they're built on trust. If you want to learn from the mistakes of the past so you don't repeat them in the future, subscribe to Red Ink History. History is written by the victors, but the most valuable lessons, those are written in red ink.